This podcast contains excerpts from New Soul Radio shows. For the full listening experience with music, visit newsoulradio.com. That's NUSOL radio.com. This is Solsei.
The following thoughts and opinions do not represent New Soul Radio, Solsei and Company, or any of our affiliates, advertisers, or sponsors.
You're listening to Gems and Gems with Kim Brio on newsoulradio.com.
This show, I put it on the flyer, and I think some of you guys may have seen it, but I'm not sure if you did. I have a guest today. Yes, I do. First show with a guest, second show on WOSD, and I am really excited to have Dr. Shirlyn Garrett with us. Say hi to the people.
Hi, guys. I'm so glad to be here. Kim, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you are here. And what they don't know is that me and you are so comfortable because we have been having some live stream discussions already, right?
Absolutely.
So last week, we actually did a live stream about mental health in the Black community.
Yes.
And we received a lot of great feedback, right?
Absolutely. We've gotten tons of feedback about just breaking down the symptomologies and different things that people are going through. We talked a little bit about the pandemic. We talked a little bit about anxiety that everybody's experiencing, and it's normal. We talked about depression that people are experiencing and not necessarily recognizing the signs of it. So we talked a little bit about that as well.
Oh, and yeah. We dug in, you guys, and that interview was what I want to say 20, 30 minutes long, right?
Yes.
But we definitely jam-packed information in there. Like you were saying about depression and anxiety, but also about those less discussed illnesses, schizophrenia, and those kind of things that in the Black community, we often just tie into Uncle so-and-so is crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah, we talked about that and we dug in, and it was a phenomenal conversation. For the people that listened to the conversation and gave you a little feedback, what was their feedback in regards to the content that was shared?
They enjoyed hearing the content in a way that they could understand it. It wasn't just textbook stuff. It was actually reality. And so I love talking about those things in a general term, because everybody's not meant to be a clinician, nor do they choose to be. You just need to kind of understand what it is that you're seeing. And when people put out there about, hey, this is my uncle, and, he's a little strange, he lives in the park, but he comes around over here to my dad's house to get something to eat. You need to know what you're really seeing is mental illness. Or you see these people out on the street, on the corner, and they may be doing anything. You need to understand that it is a mental illness that you're seeing. And they'll just say, oh, they're just crazy. Everybody has bipolar disorder. That's not the case. They have other diagnoses that we don't discuss, and that all these things are pushed into the closet because people are very fearful of what mental health is and what it means, especially in our community.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, especially in our community. And y'all, I really want you guys to take a chance, go and check out that live stream. It was phenomenal. It is on YouTube right now on the Solsei channel. So that's youtube.com/C/Solsei Chicago. So that's SOLSEI. So go ahead and look that up. You can search mental health in the Black community and it should pop up. And I will also share it on my website, guys, so that you guys can have a good foundation for what we are going to go into today. Because today's conversation is a little bit of a continuation of last week, right, Dr. Garrett?
Absolutely. And this is kind of where some of this begins in our families. And so I definitely want to have a conversation about intergenerational trauma, but I want to start by talking about adverse childhood experiences. And a lot of us have experienced those. And so in understanding where we go, we have to understand where we were to where we generated to now.
Yeah. And, listening to you say that, I'm going to tell you what popped into my head, the thought process, which we definitely dug into in that other interview as well, is keeping these secrets. Because, our community is great for keeping these secrets. And as you spoke about things that have happened to people in their childhoods, I can only imagine some of the stories of people who haven't even shared with anyone what happened in their childhood, but that does not change how it affects you.
Correct. And as you and I have had conversations in the beginning of, even in the beginning of our relationship, things that have happened, even to me, have made me the person that I am. And I have what most of us have in an African American community, is resilience. And so we have to talk about how do you get there, but you have to understand what has happened to you. And so one of the things we want to look at is how adverse childhood experiences really, how they impact who we are as people. And most of us don't even know, they just, oh, this happened to me. And we try to make light of it, or, oh, I dealt with that. But it rears itself in every relationship that you have. And so those are the things that we kind of need to talk about, and we'll move forward with that conversation. But adverse childhood experiences, the first time I heard about it, I was like really taken aback, because I'm like, oh my God, I have about 4 of these 10 things that happened to me. Wow. And what people don't understand is that when we're talking about adverse childhood experiences, we're talking about people that are around you that are using substances, or you use substances. And these are all things that happen prior to you becoming 18 years of age. So I want you to think back to what happened while you were growing up. And so it could be that you had a parent or a close family member that was incarcerated. Most of us have cousins.
Most of us do.
Exactly. And so,
and Dr. Garrett, you have all 10 of those things available?
I have 4. I do have the 10 questionnaires of the 10 questions that are on this questionnaire, and I do have it available, and I can send it to you. It's maybe something that we can post.
Let me tell you, Dr. Garrett, no, don't send it to me. This is what we're about to do. We're going to play some music, and when we come back from this music, we're going to tell them what these 10 things are, so that they can begin to self-identify and step within themselves, so that we can move forward as a people. We can't move forward as a community until we're all individually okay.
Absolutely.
Supporters of this show can join us on Patreon, where for only $5 a month, you can access all past shows and exclusive content. Join now at patreon.com/Solsei. That's patreon.com/SOLSEICO. Want to answer one of our questions, or have a song or artist request? Or do you just want to leave us some feedback? Call the New Soul Radio voicemail at 312-945-6376. That's 312-945-6376. Remember, we may play your message on air.
Hi guys, so excited to be here and talking about this. So Kim asked me to do something specifically related to adverse childhood experiences, and there's a questionnaire. So I want you to go get a piece of paper and a pen, and we're going to take this quiz real quick. And every time you answer yes, you're going to answer either yes or no, and then if you have a yes, you're going to enter the number 1, and we're going to add it up and score it. Okay. So I'm going to start the questionnaire, and this again is specifically in your childhood. I need you to think back to when you were before you were 18. It's the first 18 years of your life. Okay. And so I'm going to ask the questions, and I'll go, of course, in order. Number 1, did a parent or an adult in the household often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that they might be physically or make you physically hurt? Yes or no?
Okay.
Number 2, did a parent or another adult in the household often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Yes or no?
Ooh, good. Dr. Garrett, I think you're going to have some people with a lot of ones.
Exactly. I think so too. So we're setting the stage for this.
Yeah.
Number 3, did an adult or a person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touched their body in a sexual way, or attempt or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you? Yes or no?
And we just said number 3, y'all. Okay.
This is number 3. Number 4, did you often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special? Or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Yes or no?
All righty.
Number 5, did you often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or and you had no one to protect you? Or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Yes or no? Number 6, Were your parents ever separated or divorced? Yes or no? Number 7, were any of your parents or other adult caregivers often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at them, or sometimes or often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? Yes or no?
Whew.
I know.
This is rough. Okay.
It is rough. It's rough.
But it's real.
It's real. 8, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Yes or no? 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Yes or no? And number 10, did a household member go to prison? Yes or no? So if you have, I want you to count all your yeses up.
Right. So for every yes, it's 1 point.
Correct.
Okay. So, Dr. Garrett, I have 3. I know you said you have 4. Talk to us about what these numbers mean and what ranges. Okay, so it's normal for some people to have zeros because maybe they haven't had this experience. Some people have 1. Some people have, they range up. When you start getting into 4s and 5s, that's when you seriously know that you have had some childhood trauma. And what happens is if that is not dealt with, you have a likelihood of dying. Wow.
Early. You have an early death because it spirals into all the things that I said, the drinking and drugging and all of the promiscuous relationships, any of those things that we've seen happen in front of us from 0 to 18, we tend to repeat. Right. And the thing of women of color, we tend to not take care of ourselves. We don't go to the doctor. That's why that question was asked. Like we don't take care of ourselves. We take care of everybody else. Exactly. And so it develops into obesity. It develops into cancer. It develops into heart issues. And so because we don't take care of those ourselves and we don't take care of those items that happen to us, we tend to die an early death. And so the more that you have, the more ones that you have, the higher the chance you have or the propensity to die early if you don't get healed. And so we want to talk about how you continue to move towards healing. Exactly. That's the biggest question because Dr. Garrett, my follow-up to this, which we're going to go into a song in a minute, just to let people kind of digest this, count their points and figure this out. We're going to play a little music in a second. But my question when we come back is really going to be, what are the first steps for those people who do have 5, 6, 7 plus points, or even, let's be honest, in our community and especially in urban environments, which is a lot of our listening audience, they may have 8s, 9s, and 10s. Right. So I want to talk when we come back about what do they do when you realize you're there. What do you do to move forward and not allow yourself to use that as a reason to be down, a further reason to be down. Right. Okay, so guys, we will be right back. I'm going to play some music for you, let you lighten up. But while I'm playing this music, y'all count your points up, because when we come back, Dr. Garrett and I are going to talk about what to do for the next steps. And then we're going to dig a little bit more into intergenerational trauma.
Take New Soul Radio with you wherever you go. Download the New Soul Radio app in the Google Play or Apple App Store by searching New Soul Radio. That's NUSOL Radio. If you have what it takes to host your own radio show, hit us up at teamsolsei.com and drop your info. That's teamsolsei.com.
SOLSEI. Solsei. Imagine that this radio spot is about your business.
It's easier than you think.
Text 630-465-5742 to get started. That's
465-5742.
We have been digging in and having some in-depth conversations, guys. As you know, Gems and Jams is all about life gems and feel-good gems. So we have the feel-good gems for days like this when it gets a little rough, because see, on the road to healing, on the road to getting what you need, life gems are not easy. They're not butterflies and unicorns and rainbows and everything is wonderful and great mantras. That's great. But life is real. And as we're catering to our community and the Black community, we want to be able to address some of our real life traumas. And that is why I've had my guest here today, Dr. Shirlyn Garrett. Speak to the people, Dr. Garrett.
Hello again. I'm hoping that you are staying with us and you want to talk about a little bit about what this means. And I know it's a heavy content. Believe me, when I first discovered adverse childhood experiences, I'm like, oh my God, I have 4 myself. I was like, oh, this is what's wrong with me.
It could scare you, right?
Right.
So what do they do? For those listeners, who are just coming back on, and I will set up for you guys to be able to actually, Dr. Garrett, if you could send me the 10 when we get a chance, I'll make sure that I make this available on the website for them. But guys, what we were doing is we went through the 10 questions and we were able to answer yes or no. For every yes, you had 1 point. And for anyone who had 4 to 5 points and up, you are it's pretty clear that you have a traumatic childhood that is affecting your adulthood, right? So correct. We kind of left it there. And what I wanted to do was come back, y'all, because there's some people who have counted up their points and they're like, oh my Lord, I got 7. I don't know what to do. And I didn't want them to feel what you just said, Dr. Garrett, when you first counted up your points, and it scared the bejesus out of you. I want to take those people and talk to those people. What do you have to say to them first as far as understanding their journey?
So guys, the one thing that I will tell you, and I've just told Kim this prior to us even beginning the conversation, we are some of the most resilient people in the world. We have gone through all of these things, all of this chronic stress, the trauma, all these things that we just thought was normal in our families, and it has impacted us, but we don't realize to what degree. But we are resilient. And so the thing that I want you to hear is resilience. We continue to bounce back. We continue to go forward. But the thing that I need you to know is that there's a place that we can stop the things that I said about us having early deaths and all that. And the place is that, again, we have to go to a place of healing. And so when I say healing, we have to start to talk about these things that occurred. And so as I was telling Kim about my own journey, it was a long time before I had a conversation about something that impacted me as a child with my family. And when I finally was able to have that conversation, I felt like a ton of bricks was off me, because I carried that my whole life until I was able to give that conversation and place the blame where it needed to be placed.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, like being able to get that off of you. And so one of the things that I'll continue to say over and over is I believe that you should have that person that you hire, somebody that you're going to talk to independently about you, that is listening to you, so that you can get all of these things that you've kept deep, dark, and in a secret place out and air it, because we carry that. And whether we know it or not, it impacts our life. It impacts our relationships, how we treat our children, how we treat our spouse, how we treat those around us. And even though we don't mean it to, and we may not recognize it, it does. It impacts everything that we do.
Yeah. And as you were talking, I'm going to tell you what came to mind, Dr. Garrett. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who's never been to therapy or never opened themselves up to that or had a negative, mindset in regards to it. And for anyone that's saying there's nothing that they can open up within me, honey, I will tell you, your therapist will make you unlock things within yourself that you didn't even know you felt.
Exactly.
They will help you unlock some things that are laying dormant in yourself that you're not even aware of, just by being able to ask the right questions, be patient with you, help you understand, because there's something really important you said on our last interview, Dr. Garrett, is that you guys don't think that you have the answer. You're helping us because you believe we already have the answers within ourselves.
Correct. And I'm glad you brought that up. And that is the exact truth. You do have the answers. You know yourself better than anyone else. And that's what I'll say. You always are the star of your own show. You know yourself. And so the thing is that we're helping you to maybe formulate some plans, but we're talking to you about you. You know yourself. And so we believe that you have that within you. And so we're going to help. If you find a therapist that is telling you what to do, that's not a therapist. That's not a counselor.
Yeah.
The counselor is only there to help you. And we might ask the questions like Kim has said, that maybe spark something within you to make you want to, you might go deeper and say, I have never thought about it that way. So it's someone that's there to kind of just open with your thought waves up, maybe give you different techniques, very different coping skills, that maybe things that you used to do that you don't do anymore, help you realize that, help pull you forward. And that's what we're here to do. And so I think that is something that people don't get, and they don't feel. They think that we're going to tell you what to do. That's not a counselor.
That's not how this works, right?
And that's not how this works. And I know people have seen it on TV. That's not how it happens. And so that's not the reality of it.
And that's important for people to know who have never experienced it, and especially people in our community who are a little standoffish automatically about it. Now, Dr. Garrett, talk to me a little bit about how they begin this healing process. If they realize they've got this 7, 8, 9, how do they begin that? I know you said talk to a therapist, but what do they do immediately so that they can go to sleep tonight and not be shaken?
Well, and the thing is again, now we know. So now you find that trusted friend or that trusted person that you can talk to a little bit and start to kind of open up. You have somebody that I would think most people do. They have that one person that they can talk to. Yeah. And I was telling Kim previously, I have my best friend that I might call and say, hey, I need about 30 minutes. Let's talk. And I'm going to talk to you all the way home because there's something that's on my chest that I need to open up. Find that one person. And just, if you can, and they're trusted, start talking a little bit about some of the things that maybe you have experienced that you buried deep inside. The other thing is journal.
I was just going to say that.
I journal. So I have things that I've written down, things that have happened, things that I want to talk about, even my hopes, my dreams, my visions, things that I need to do for me. And that's my place that I write down. Another thing that you might do is, again, as you start the process of healing, I tell people, I even do a vision board of things that I want to see in the future. Yeah. And Kim will tell you that my background, even for our Zoom calls,
is your dream kitchen, baby.
It's my dream kitchen. I have my dream house. I have my dream this. And so all of it is, even if we're virtual, I have these things already pent so that I can use them, things that I can see. And the thing that I need you guys to hear is this is not done to make you feel bad. This is done so that you guys will understand that we carry all of this stuff within ourselves, and we've just put it in context for you. This study was put into a context for people to understand how important it is to talk about that early childhood trauma that we now carry forward. And so we've carried it for a very, very long time. And that's why I wanted to start at this point, because most of us don't even realize that we have it. I have not been traumatized. That's what everybody will say.
That's the go-to, right?
I ain't nothing wrong with me. Okay, you can believe that. But if you have one of these 10 things, something else happened to you.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that has been very defining for a lot of people has been that there have been a lot of people paying attention to trauma now. And so Oprah Winfrey did a special with ABC on trauma, and she went back to Milwaukee where her trauma happened. And if we know her, she talked about it openly, what happened to her as a young girl when she was there, and she'd been brutally raped and other things. And so this was the first time in her 60-some years that she was able to go back to that place where it happened and be able to talk about it. And so she learned some important things from Dr. Bruce Perry. And if you guys look him up, it'll come up. They've just written a new book together. And what she learned was we as a people tend to say, and not only us, what's wrong with you? When we look at everybody, what's wrong with you? And the paradigm shift, or the shift that we have to have in thinking is not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you.
Oh,
What
Dr.
happened
Gary,
to
you don't even understand the theme. The theme of today's show is consideration season and moving in consideration and empathy with other people. And this ties in directly to that, because once you begin to look at yourself and what you've been through and how that affects you, you can then look at how people's actions are not necessarily always a reflection of you, but a reflection of them and what they've been through, and you moving in a considerate and empathetic way in handling yourself with other people. This is so full circle. I love this.
There we go.
I love this. Now, what we're going to do, Dr. Gary, because I want to do one more thing. I know that I said I was going to do 3 segments with you, girl. We're going to keep going. I want to do another segment with you. We're going to play a little music, but then when we come back, I want us to talk. We really talked on a very personal level about trauma, but I want us to touch on that intergenerational trauma. Absolutely. And our trauma as Black people, because even if you have 0 on this list, as a Black person in this country, there's some trauma that you've inherited without you even giving it permission.
Correct.
So we're going to dig in and talk about that, guys. We're going to give you a little music, and we will be back and talk about this intergenerational trauma.
Want 24/7 access to past shows,
Exclusive content,
and VIP on-air opportunities? Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Solsei. That's SOLSEICO.
Solsei.
Want more dope content? Check out Solsei's YouTube by searching Solsei on that Solsei Chicago.
I'm so excited because we are heavy into this conversation with my guest today, Dr. Shirlyn Garrett. Go ahead and speak to the people, Dr. Garrett.
Hi, guys. I'm back.
Oh, my gosh, y'all. And we have been going in depth. For anyone who is just tuning in, I mean, definitely stay tuned for the remainder of the interview, but I'm going to do my best to get this interview available for you guys to listen to on demand, because it's so much information that needs to be discussed. We also talked about the interview that Dr. Garrett and I have done previously, where we discussed mental health in the Black community, and that is available on YouTube, and I will make that available on my social media networks too. Guys, it's all about these life gems and these feel-good jams. I just can't have you up here dancing. I got to have you dancing and feeling too. We got to even it out. Y'all. So, Dr. Garrett, we talked a lot about mental health in the Black community, obviously, because we discussed our last show. We talked about adverse childhood traumas. Am I saying that correctly?
Experiences, yes. Experiences,
perfect. And now I kind of want to talk about this intergenerational trauma that you and I, this is really what we even geared this entire conversation toward in the first place. And the trauma of Black people in this country in general. So I'm just going to give you the mic in regards to intergenerational trauma, and honey, you just go.
Okay. Thank you so much. And so this is one of the topics that I feel has really, truly impacted our communities, and people have not really thought a lot about it. It hasn't had a lot of media coverage or any of these things. So I appreciate, Kim, that you guys have given me the opportunity to be able to speak about it. And so the transgenerational, intergenerational terms are used interchangeably. So I may say transgenerational trauma, but I'm also talking about intergenerational trauma when I do that. And so I want you to think that there's a historical perspective that we've not even discussed. And people have to think about this. They were like, oh, slavery was so long ago. It didn't impact me. But yes, it did. And yes, it does. It continues to impact us. And if we saw nothing in this last year, it has shown us that it is still impacting who we are as a people. Yes. Every single day, every time you take a breath, every time my child walks out the door and is an African-American male, I feel something, and I'm scared for him. And most people are, as parents, as our kids are walking out the door. Now, how this impacts what is going on in our lives now is because this is an event that is a target of a group of people. But we're that group of people. We were a part of chattel slavery. So we were property. All right. And so this has impacted and gone on for generations and generations. And it's just now coming to the point of where people, when we heard the talk about reparations, it was because everybody else was given reparations except for us. We never were. And we also never received anything related to treatment that we experienced with regards to racism or the trauma of being slaves.
Yeah.
And as we watched even the movie of Harriet, I was so moved because I felt that in my spirit and in my soul, because that's our story.
Yeah.
That's our story. Well, don't you think, if you guys are thinking about this, it has impacted everything that has gone on in our communities. And it impacts what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
How I got really into studying about this and even talking about it is I had an opportunity to listen to a wonderful speaker, Dr. Joy, and I call her Dr. Joy because I messed up her last name, but it's DeGruy, Degruy.
Okay.
And she has a phenomenal book out and a study that she's done called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I have sent this book to people. I have told people about it. I've told people about this, and it looks at all of it's a multi-generational approach of behavior, reflection, the resilience that I spoke of earlier, and how it has been harmful and destructive to people of African American culture.
Yeah.
And so it was a theory that she developed 12 years ago. And so as we talk about it, we talked about we are the only people that haven't had any kind of reparations, any kind of treatment, and all of that is carried on from generation to generation in our families. And so we know that in slavery, we had a typically matriarchal society where the mothers were there and they were the heads of our families. And then the father was often sold off, or his name was even omitted from the records. And what does that do to a child?
Wow.
Think how
our existence. Yeah.
Exactly. And so they just automatically, the dad's name was omitted. Imagine holding your birth certificate up and your dad's name is not even on there.
And, you know, even as you say that now, you're talking about then, but I think about how they've implemented those same types of things now, because look at how many of us don't know who our fathers are.
Absolutely. And so I'm coming that direction. You already read my mind.
Oh, yeah.
We're going there. So we talk about being an African of the American chattel slavery system started 1619 to 1865. Now we just 1619 to 1865.
And guys, I know you guys are like, why does she repeat it? Because we're zooming and we can see each other. Y'all can't see us, but my eyes got so big because who knew that it went back so long? That's not what they teach us. Wait, hold on, Dr. Garrett, you're muted. There you go.
As we're talking, I had my window open, so someone's cutting grass now about all times. But it went on for such a long period of time, and people don't know that. And so we just celebrated Juneteenth. Most people don't even know the meaning or the relevance of Juneteenth, and that slavery existed in Texas 2 years longer than it did in the rest of the world, right? In the rest of the country. So it took that long period of time for us to even find out in Texas. And when I say us, it's because that's where I was born and raised, to even find out that slavery was over. So what happens after that? After slavery, then comes Jim Crowism. We hear about the term Jim Crow. That was 1865 to 1965.
Or arguably later, depending on where you at.
Right. I'm coming forward. I'm going to keep moving forward. So that's when the 13th Amendment came out in 1865. Then they went to a process called convict leasing and sharecropping, right? So they had that going on. Now, I want to challenge people to think about this. When the convict leasing and sharecropping began, they went from slavery to the convicts. It went from being a slave to being a prisoner. And that's still going on today. Y'all? It sounds familiar, right? So we need to think about that. Think about how many of our men are incarcerated.
Yes. And for crimes that are not proven, or petty crimes, or
Exactly. So then 1866, we see the rise of the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh.
So, yes. And so they've continued on, and at least 4,742 of them are in southern states during this time period. And those are the ones that were known.
Those are the ones we knew. Those are the ones who were out with the hoods, and those were the ones that were out.
Correct. And so then they had the Great Migration, as we talk about people moving from the South coming to the North. That was 1915 to 1968. We see them moving, leaving the southern plantations and actually migrating up there. But they don't talk about the summer of 1919, which was the Red Summer.
Yes, you better talk to him, Dr. Garrett.
Yes, 13 days of racial violence on the south side of Chicago where we sit today. 23 blacks and 15 whites were dead. 537 people were injured, and then 1,000 black families were left homeless. Ask yourself why. Think about the torture and all the trauma that people have had to endure. So keep moving forward with me. I'm going through the time frame.
Oh, yeah.
Then we have the introduction of welfare. We want to help you. That was 1968 to 1975. And in some, arguably, it's still going on, right?
Yeah.
So they made the rule that there are no adult men allowed in the house.
You
can't be in the home. So you talk about the destruction of African American families. It's no longer the family that we had. So it's destruction as the family unit as we know it, period. And women became the head of the house.
Yeah.
So
and fast forward, guys that are that listen to this too, when you guys talk about how these current generations, we don't know how to date, we don't know how to interact with each other. We're literally the products of living in households without men totally. We don't know what to do with a man in the house because we didn't have one. It was designed that way.
Exactly. It was designed. And that's the word that I want you to continue to hear. It was designed that way.
Yeah.
So I want to even point out this fact that in 1960, just think that wasn't that long ago, 22% of African American children lived with single parents. And in 1968, that rose to 31.4%. And by 2011, it doubled to 64% of people. And currently, it's tripled to 72%.
I need you guys to pause and take that in. That means that 72%, almost 3/4 of African American children are raised in one parent households. 3/4, 75%, almost. What did you say? 72?
Yes.
That's good. Look, that's high enough for me. Guys, we have to understand how this affects us. Keep going, Dr. Garrett.
So that in itself, and this information came from the U.S. Census Bureau. So it's nothing that I made up, nothing that I'm pulling out of thin air. It's the statistics are out there. And so if you think about this is designed for us in the way that it's been designed for us we are traumatized. Think about that. And we don't know how to have relationships, as Kim was saying. We don't know how that looks. We don't know how a successful possible relationship looks. If you look, there were the Monahan report came out. Most people don't know about that. And so as you talk about it,
now what's that? The Monahan report?
Yes, the Monahan report. And I'll give you this information. But he says in here is that Black people have never been accepted into the American dream. We already know that. Yeah. He pointed it out, and he got into a lot of trouble for pointing this stuff out. He was hired and commissioned to do this report, and this is the information that is his findings. These are his findings. What he said is that in order for the Black family to succeed, Black men must have employment. He said that the key to everything is repairing the Black family. Yeah. And that's something that we're saying now. 30, 40 years ago, he said this back then. Yeah. And it's still in disrepair. And that's why we're talking about the intergenerational trauma, because it's just passed on and on and on and on. And you can see back from where I started with chattel slavery, we've never have had any interventions. And while there was the welfare piece, they thought that was an intervention, it actually destroyed the family unit. And
what they told us was an intervention. We're going to know and be aware that it was designed from the beginning. Anytime you can say that you cannot have a complete family in order to receive this assistance, let's just be clear, you guys, that was designed that way.
It was by design, correct. And so then let's move forward to 1975 and to 1990. They have what they created, the hyper ghetto. So they had the extreme concentration of poverty. We know that underprivileged groups that occurred, Blacks and whites using and selling drugs at about the same rate. But of course, Black people were 20 times more likely to go to jail.
Correct.
And so and it had the impact of, and I was a student at this point in time, especially in 1990, where they had the effects of crack and how that impacted the family and how that impacted relationships and how that impacted children. And so they had these adverse childhood experiences. Now I want you to keep that in the forefront of your mind as we move through this. And so then also there was a lot of police presence now, because now they have this epidemic called crack. And so all of these things have impacted our relationships. And so right now we have what's called the institutionalized generation. From 1985 to now, we have, it came after the crack epidemic. It was born in the 1980s and is presently going on. And so what the thing is that they have created a sense of inferiority among African-American people. And they also have created a sense of dependence on our culture. That we are
and I want us to dig into that, because I think that right there, and we talked about this a little bit on our last interview, that right there really breeds and hones into the violence that takes place in Chicago and a lot of other urban inner city places. Guys, we're going to be right back. I'm going to play a little more music. We're going to come back. I love having you here, Dr. Garrett. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm going to hop in and play a little bit of music, and then we're going to talk and we're going to go forward. We're going to speak about this newer era of it from 1985 to current, what it looks like and how we actually see that playing out around us. Guys, this is Kim Brio. I am so happy to have Dr. Shirlyn Garrett here.
Starting a business? Grab Kim Brio's free brand identity checklist to remove the chaos around DIY in your brand. Get it free at kimbrio.com/checklist. That's Kim Brio. BRIO.com/checklist.
Starting a business? Kim Brio's 30-day brand takeover is for you. Get your new website, marketing plan, social media strategy, and all of the training you need in just 30 days. Apply now to see if you qualify for Kim Brio's 30-day brand takeover at www.30daybrandtakeover.com.
Dr. Garrett is just as glad we are having some conversations that need to be had. We're so happy that you're sticking with us. And I'm hoping that this feel-good music that I'm playing is taking your anxiety down a little bit as we talk about some of these topics that are a little hard to talk about, but need to be talked about. So if you haven't listened, guys, we have been talking about mental health in the Black community. We've been talking about childhood trauma. We've been talking about intergenerational trauma. And that's what we're in the midst of talking about right now. Dr. Garrett is going through a timeline of the traumas that African Americans have seen as a group in this country from 1619, so from when we got here to present. And we're going to, she's actually talking about the last portion of that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how we see that in action today, currently in 2021. So Dr. Garrett, I'm going to give you the floor. We were talking about this newest portion, which is from 1985 to present, and that was called Institutionalized
Generation.
Generation. Got it.
Yes. The institutionalized generation. And so they have also created a culture of, hey, I'm gonna do it for you. I want what can you do for me kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so we talk about that. And if you think about, there are places in Chicago, and I was amazed because again, I grew up on a farm in Texas and had food and had cattle and all these things. And so we were able to do for ourselves. When I moved here and you had to go so many places to get foods and do so many things, it was of concern to me. So as we look in certain neighborhoods where it's a food desert, and there aren't things around that are healthy, and you have to go to a store and you might purchase old meats and old that is it blew my mind. And so we still have that, and we still have a disadvantaged lifestyle, and it's not by choice. A lot of us have worked, and a lot of us have continued. We've always worked and continue to do, but again, we're underpaid. And so I have to put that piece in there.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing in 2021, there was a book that was written called The New Jim Crow. And if you guys, I always drop the knowledge of the book and books that have been helpful in me understanding what it is that we're talking about.
And that's a bad woman. That
she is Michelle Alexander.
Yes.
So the Jim Crow. And so she's talking about the high numbers of mass incarceration, which we both know is plaguing our society and us specifically.
And so particularly here in Chicago.
Exactly. And not just the males, it's also females. And so we have to take a look at that and what can be done for the families and our people that are, if you remember, one of the questions on adverse childhood experiences is, have you experienced someone being incarcerated in your family? That, again, is traumatizing. Yeah. And it's traumatizing to the family as well as the person that's going through the sentence.
Yeah.
One of the things is that you also notice that we started talking about ADHD. Think about, when is the first time you ever heard the term ADHD? My kid has ADHD.
This was in grammar school when the kid had too much energy, and that's what they would tell him and put him on Ritalin. Mm-hmm. And that's all we knew.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so think about this. On average, a lot of the children of color have been diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And there are two types, but they've been put on that, not realizing that it's also considered, it could be trauma rather than the ADHD diagnosis. Yeah. And so people are very quick to give a diagnosis. Also, oppositional defiant disorder. Those were terms that, and people in record numbers have had that diagnosis of being oppositionally defiant.
Now, what does that mean?
That's what I was going to say. At 13 or 14, people in our community, and I'm just going to say it, oh, he's smelling himself. Now, you've heard that term. Most people have heard that term.
Yes, baby.
Where we exert our independence in some shape or form or fashion. Yeah. And you can talk back to our parents and all those
heavily, things. Y'all can't see us, but we got these necks going right now.
Exactly. And so they are not necessarily following the rules. We're finding our independence, but rather than people see it as a positive or a strength, because people are starting to find out who they are around that time age, and that time range, people see it as a negative, and they get a diagnosis of ODD, which is the oppositional defiant disorder. And so they, again, could be treated with medication. They could be treated with therapies, different things. If they truly have that diagnosis, medication might be helpful in some instances, but not always. And so sometimes as a clinician, you have to talk to gain a truly good understanding of what's going on with your child that you're treating, and not just giving a diagnosis.
And not just quickly looking at symptoms and writing it off.
Correct.
Writing it off.
And so also in 2021, we see a higher level of foster care, and specifically among African-American children nationally. And so we've seen adoptions, we've seen all kinds of transitional housings, all kinds of things increase. And the reason and how you will know is you could go to your state's website, and most of those statistics are posted. So you can see it's nothing that is hidden from you. The majority of the kids that are in care is all there. Just for us, just if you're going to be inquisitive, go and take a look. The kids that are in care are predominantly African American.
Now, let me ask you this, Dr. Garrett, because this one we touched on at the end of the last interview that we did, and this was really big. Can we talk about the violence, especially the violence with the young people, especially we're here in Chicago. And I do know that we have listeners that are worldwide, listeners that are everywhere. And Chicago has a reputation that precedes itself.
Yes.
So you guys do understand, and a lot of ways that we've normalized violence. Even this past holiday weekend, I think there were 95 people shot over one weekend. Talk to me about how this intergenerational trauma is building and affecting the violence within our Black communities.
I continue to say this, and thanks for asking that question, because that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation. I believe that this is part of the basis of why we continue to have these issues and concerns. We have never dealt with the trauma that happened to us previously. And as we continue to move forward, everybody has this individualistic kind of lifestyle. It's about me. You have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. We moved away from the family and the village and all those kinds of things. And we used to have that. We don't have that anymore. We don't have that I am my brother's keeper. as much as we used to, or I'm my sister's keeper. It's everybody looking out for themselves.
Last week, you gave a perfect example of this. And you said last week, it used to be that any auntie on the block could whoop you if you acted up. And now we're at the point in society where you could see a man beating a woman on the sidewalk and people walk by because it's not their business.
Exactly. And so that's that individualistic piece that I'm talking about, is everybody's looking out for themselves and their best interest, and they're not looking out for anyone else. And it used to be that if somebody was beating somebody, the men in the family, and I'm not promoting this, but the men in the family would go and handle that person. Yes, they're going to handle that. Not anymore. And so people don't have that connection that they once had. And I believe that is something that is continuing to plague us today. And it started back then by the families being broken apart, us not knowing where we come from, us not having any connectedness to our cousins and families and all that. And I grew up in a big family, and all of our cousins were connected. And I was blessed in that way, that I had the opportunity to have my great-great-grandparents and know who they were. And I could tell you things about them. But I also had the fact that I didn't have my parents with me at that point in time. And my grandparents raised me and reared me. And so that meant something a little bit different, but they taught me the value of family and the importance of family and knowing that they were my village. And so I think that is something that is truly, truly missing. And it goes back to this intergenerational trauma and how things are passed down through epigenetics. And that's a conversation that we really also need to continue to have. And I think that this is just one conversation, because I can't get it all in at one time, but
you're gonna be back. They go look. I told them last week that they would see you again. I don't know if they didn't believe me or not. Here you are this week, and I would love to say they're gonna see you next week too. They don't even know yet, but so we're gonna keep these conversations up. Dr. Garrett, I got one more question for you. Talk to me about why this matters so much to have these conversations on these types of platforms for you personally.
Personally, okay, I thank you. For me, being a child from the South and being a child of a single mother, but I was reared again, like I said, by my grandparents, knowing what I now know about trauma and how it affects the brain and how it affects the relationships and things that people have, and it affects health. Those are things that I find it important to talk to our community about. Again, because no one is having the conversation. People don't know about it. And as I'm doing things and talking about these kinds of relationships and issues and concerns with individuals, things come up like this, the questionnaire that I asked, and people find out about the adverse childhood experiences, and they go, oh my God, they can kind of make a connection to why, this is why I do that. And they don't know. And they have no idea of why things are done the way that they're done. And so one of the things is that they don't know that if they have depression, we've talked about this a little bit, and people have talked about it. If they have depression while they're pregnant, it affects the baby. If things happen with trauma and they're traumatized during the pregnancy, it affects the baby. Some of the DNA is changed. And so we have to talk about that. And that's the study of epigenetics. And so we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to break it down in bite-sized pieces so that we can understand. And I feel like being able to talk about it, to get this out, and it's some of the work that we're doing and some of the things that I'm definitely teaching and talking about all over. I think that as we start to educate ourselves and learn more about who we are as a people, I think that's going to heal the community. So I think it's important to have these conversations. And we need to heal.
Absolutely. Dr. Shirlyn Garrett, can you tell them where they can find you?
Yes, I'm at Chicago State University, believe it or not.
The Chicago State University.
The Chicago State University. So you definitely can reach out to me there. And also I can give you my personal email, and that's something that you can place out there as well. And so if there are questions or conversations, I definitely am open to answering and responding. And if people want to have me come and talk and all those things, that's something that I'm open to do.
I love that. That's why I wanted to ask you, because I want them to understand that you're here for this. Yes.
Yes.
And guys, if you can't get in touch with Dr. Garrett, you don't know how to get in touch with her, and you have additional questions, guys, do not hesitate. Send in your questions, send in your comments. Like I said, this is not going to be the last time that Dr. Garrett is here. So if you send those questions and those comments in, we will address them, won't we, Dr. Garrett?
Absolutely. No problem.
All right, guys, thank you so much, Dr. Garrett. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to give him a little bit more music before I cut the show for the night. Guys, this has been one heck of a show. Am I right, Dr. Garrett?
It has been. I'm tired too.
Look, that right? This has been one heck of a show. It's been a lot of information that you need. But guys, we're so happy that you're here, that you stuck through with this and listen to this information. And when I make this available for you guys to share, I want you guys to share this interview with your family, your friends, your professional affiliates that are within our community that this can actually affect. So, Dr. Garrett, thank you so much for being here.
Again, thank you for having me.
No problem. Supporters of this show can join us on Patreon, where for only $5 a month, you can access all past shows and exclusive content. Join now at patreon.com/SolseiCo. That's patreon.com/SOLSEICO. This podcast contains excerpts from New Soul Radio shows. For the full listening experience with music, visit newsoulradio.com. That's NUSOL radio.com.